You're watching PEGRI TV, Rhode Island's public access channel.
Welcome everybody to the Four Corners, brought to you by the Official Wrestling Museum. We are your host. I am Angel, and I'm joined by the Official Wrestling Museum's Hall of Famer.
Low life. Low life.
He's in the house, folks. And yes, this is Halloween week for us, so we're very excited.
Well, as you said the first time, suck it. That was, remember he said that? That was like
yes, I do remember. Right. So we, oh man. So ladies and gentlemen, a couple of things. First, we want to just toss out there. Thank you to everybody that had us help our community outreach program over the last month and a half. It was an absolutely blast to be a part of all those trunk or treat events and festivities and parades. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people got a lot of autographs and pictures, a lot of fun, crazy amount of times. We won 2 different trunk or treats for the best setup, and honestly, it was just us with a table and stuff. But it was just the way. We had Baymax yet, but it was just the way we were entertaining and interacting with people. So we had a great time. If anybody's doing any type of events coming up and you want to see the Official Wrestling Museum there or like us to come out and help, just reach out to the website. It's totally free for us to come out, and if we're available, we'll send some of our superstars out to you guys. Before we go any further, on a serious note, we want to send our condolences out to Fifi, the French maid from WCW. A lot of people know her as Wendy, and the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Her son passed away recently, his stepson, and our condolences to both of them and their families at this time. So this is a pretty interesting show today. We're going to have some fun today. Why don't you tell them what it's all about, Kane?
So we're basically going to talk about crowd reactions and 4 that stand out, whether it be good or bad. Not necessarily biggest or loudest, but just something that you deem worth, something that you want to talk about. And you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I'm going to go first because last week you stole my stuff, so I'm going to go first.
Okay.
I'm going to make you think this week. I think probably one of the biggest crowd reactions of all time was the Hardy Boys returning at WrestleMania.
Okay.
That pop was just unbelievable with that crowd. You knew something was coming, especially that the New Day was not actually on the show wrestling. They were like the spokesman, guest host, thank you, of the show. So it was definitely something odd that they weren't on it. And
I remember
there was some talks possibly, over some time, but that pop was just astronomical.
It was pretty big. I mean, that was probably one of those biggest, worst kept secrets, we should say.
Yeah.
But it was a huge pop. It was big.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go with my first one. When Scott Steiner debuted at that Survivor Series at Madison Square Garden,
Okay.
and the sirens came on.
Yeah.
Oh my God! If you don't remember it, go back and watch that. That crowd was absolutely crazy. I mean, I know his run in WWF did not work out, but that first night, oh my God, he was a megastar.
Yeah,
the lights went out, the sirens came on, and he came walking out doing like so huge.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't, I know you kind of maybe like, really? even if you're questioning it, go back and check it out. You won't.
I'm not so much questioning it. I see where you're
Yeah.
coming from, and I do agree. I think Scott Steiner definitely should have been better than what it was.
Yeah. See, I'm not going for his whole run. Just that one particular,
Right.
that one entrance.
Another crowd reaction for me is when The Miz won the title and the little girl in the crowd.
Oh, okay. So not necessarily a crowd reaction, but
Well, it was, 'cause
the
it
whole
was-
crowd, but that one person.
Right.
Okay,
But-
that's different.
Yeah, and I think to me it just really it caught the attention. Obviously, WWE used it to their fullest.
They still
as
put it
they
out there
could.
every now and then. You know?
They do.
They still reference
but
it.
it really just shows that as an individual, your opinion matters, and I think that was really cool with it. And Miz was just really able to interact with that person, that little girl, and I just
Yeah.
think it was really
That was
something
kind
cool.
of that was kind of the original for that too. I know they've done other fans like one-off, like the Undertaker guy. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you're picking him, but you know
Nah.
the Undertaker guy that was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I was kind of thinking of that like one-off
Okay.
type of fan reaction. I said, well, if you're going to think of anybody,
the
that
the
one
Miz
right
girl
there.
was like
Yep.
the blueprint for that.
Yep.
I guess you could say.
But don't also forget, remember the old lady that got in Hogan's face in WCW?
Yeah. Okay.
She
Yep.
probably runs second, and then the guy found the take.
All right, so I'm gonna go with, for crowd reaction, just basically during the Attitude Era, anytime that glass broke and Stone Cold came out, oh my God, the crowd just lost their mind. Anytime you would hear, whoosh, that was it.
Yep.
Like, and now remember when he first started using that, when he first became Stone Cold, he didn't have the glass break at first. It was just a
Yeah.
and then they added the glass break, which I think was genius.
Yeah, it was cool
When they
actually
add
had
stuff
the
right at the
glass actually
beginning, oh
really
yeah,
break.
yeah.
That
so
was awesome.
anytime that glass broke, the crowd just, I mean, it was just lost it. So I think that's a great reaction.
No, I definitely agree. I think that's probably as big as what. You know what I mean? The what chant. You know, I think it goes hand to hand.
What?
It came
What?
from the same person. You know what I mean? Let's see. Which one do I want to throw out next? So I have a couple in mind, kind of going back and forth. I think I'm going to go with, so crowd reactions are very interesting because you can get a great pop, you can get a great boo, or what we call crickets in the business. And crickets is when nobody's reaction in either way. And there was a match in history that we got crickets at the very end of the match. But it wasn't crickets because they were bored, they were in shock. And that's when Undertaker's streak came to an end.
Okay.
The crowd was just
Well,
so...
I did just reference the guy, but this isn't the
Well,
guy.
right. I'm like,
He's
oh.
part of it, though, but-
well, when you started talking about
Yeah.
that, I'm like, please don't mention that. But that wasn't, you know, like I said, it wasn't the
Don't
cricket.
talk about my brother.
Right.
No, go ahead.
It was just dead
No, yeah.
silence and the shock of it. It just took the air out of the whole building. And to be able to
did.
do that with just a finish of a match.
It did. It was
tells
dead
you
silent.
what that meant.
See, now this is what I'm talking about, like, when we're talking about great crowd reactions, horrible, or, you know, positive, negative. And what's funny is the thing you picked.
Yep.
This show was originally going to be a best of, like, you're basically Mount Rushmore of things.
Yeah.
Best this, best that. The very first episode Sergeant Stryker was on,
Yeah.
knocked it out by, and I remember.
Knocked the
He
blueprint.
picked this exact subject.
Yeah.
We were talking about WrestleMania, I believe.
Yeah.
And we were picking WrestleMania moments.
Yeah.
And he picked this. And I was like, what do you mean? This is a horrible moment. And he's like, that's why I'm picking it, because it
Yeah.
stands out to me. So it's interesting that you go ahead and you pick this, and this is
That
the
really
reason-
changed the blueprint of that show.
This changed the
that
blueprint
show.
of this show.
It did too.
Yeah. All right, so I am also gonna,
You notice they've given us more leeway since the first couple of shows we've done.
Yeah.
Like they used to be so strict on us. I'm like, no, it has to be this way. And now they're like, it's just easier if we just let them go and just hope they don't
Well, you
hit
know,
those censor
yeah.
marks that we can't hit.
the thing is, if you pick the best of on everything, some of these subjects have been done to redundancy, like the NWO. We know who we're gonna pick the best of: Hogan,
Yeah.
Hall, Nash, Six.
Right.
It's just the same old, same old. But where we picked the Dinner and the Mover guy and Nick Patrick, and
Right.
we do try to pick some things that are unique.
Right. It's kind of like if you're flipping through the channels for the news and you just want to hear something different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're going to give you that something different.
So my next pick, I'm gonna go with
Be interested if you pick Kane at any point.
Kane.
Just saying. 'Cause you
No,
won the
Kane
match.
doesn't make any of them.
Kane doesn't-
Well, that's gotta be Kane. That doesn't make the list though. That I'm gonna also pick a WrestleMania moment. WrestleMania 18, Rock and Hogan. That whole match was just insane. The crowd. I know the next night Hogan got that huge ovation on Raw. That was like a 5-minute standing ovation in Toronto.
Yep.
But I'm picking the match the night before at WrestleMania. Just the Hogan and Rock match, and the crowd just was like, who do you root for? And they ended up going for Hogan over Rock, but the crowd was just into anything, a punch, a kick. It didn't matter what was in that match. The crowd reacted. The crowd was alive for that match, so much to the point the next match was the actual main event of Jericho and Hunter for the Undisputed title, I think it was.
Yep.
No, you talk about crickets. They had crickets because you cannot follow a match with that much emotion with another match. It just killed it. And so that, to me, was one of the matches. The crowd reaction just really, it's like amazing to watch.
Yeah.
It gives you chills to hear the crowd for that match.
So now we're coming down to our last picks each. There's honorable mentions we'll mention. And I don't want to mention any honorable mentions because I don't want to take if
We've
one's
blown through these.
We
but-
really have.
Yeah, but you know what? There's
I mean? And
plenty of honorable
that's-
mentions.
There's tons, and I think we can actually dive into a lot, you know what I mean, that's going on. I think I'm going to throw in a little audible, and I'm going to go with Paul Heyman's speech at the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
I think the crowd was so into that speech and hung by every word he was saying because who would have thought Paul Heyman would have went into the WWE Hall of Fame? Even when he came in and he was the advocate and all that stuff, obviously behind the cameras, he was doing so much for the company, absolutely deserved to be in. On just the camera's sake, who would think Paul Heyman would have made it in? Hated by Vince, was a competition. They brought him in. They never really did too much with him. And everything was just held by the fans, the reaction. I probably was one of the best Hall of Fame speeches, in my opinion. I think there's a couple other ones that are really good. You know what I mean? That could be a four-corner show as well, too. Best Hall of Fame speeches.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with that.
Some of the later ones are bad because they time them and everything. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't even think of going that route, with like the real, speeches and stuff like that. But,
Yeah.
So my fourth pick, this is a moment to me. Again, his career in the WWF did not pan out the way that you would think it was. It was with Scott Steiner, as I mentioned, that was it for him. He peaked, and from there it was downhill. With this guy, I also feel the same way. I feel like his debut was. What are you laughing at? The Kane mask?
I just looked at one of the monsters, dude. I think, man, if you wasn't established of who you are in the business, you could get a mask just like this, dude.
Yeah. But so I'm picking another debut in the WWF.
Okay.
And when it happened, I mean, it was another, like the Hardys, basically this was the worst kept secret. Now, I don't know if you know where I'm going with this. Royal Rumble 2000, Madison Square Garden, the man from Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York, when Taz made his debut against the undefeated Kurt Angle at that time, too. Kurt Angle had an open challenge, undefeated, and Taz is doom, 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 beep, beep.
Yeah.
The crowd just
Went crazy.
erupted. And, I mean, it gives me chills, again, it gives me chills talking about it. It was such a moment. The crowd went ballistic. And, again, Taz didn't end up having the greatest WWF run, but that night, I almost feel like the movie Little Giants.
Yeah.
But one time.
That one
But
time.
yeah, so same thing with Scott Steiner. That one night, top of the world. You know what I mean? The crowd went crazy. He won the match. It was insane. And for guys like him and Steiner who didn't have great WWF runs, they definitely had two of the biggest reactions ever.
Right.
So,
You know, and it's funny too because sometimes it's for us being a part of the business for so long, knowing ins and outs, running stuff, doing stuff, performing. It's kind of tough for us to really like that. Oh, my God, or get us to really pop. You know what I mean? Now there's some honorable mentions that for me, my first honorable mention probably should have made my list, to be honest with you. But I think these other ones were kind of more a different way that you were going to go. Probably maybe not the Hardy Boys, but I think maybe everything else was. So I kind of wanted to kind of keep it a little different. Edge's return at the Royal Rumble.
yeah, that was a big
pop
one.
was unbelievable.
I think Daniel Bryan also, when he won the title,
Yes,
was
the yes
another one
movement.
I really tossed around. And another real recent one, Sammy with the Roman, and when Sammy turned on Roman and hit him with the chair.
Yeah.
I mean, that was huge too. So, you talk about and the negative for the crowd reaction. How about gobbledygooker? I mean, that was
Yeah.
pretty bad. The crowd was booing it right away. The crowd was booing. They were trying to go, listen to the kids. They love it.
Because they had no idea what it was. And
Right.
they did it during intermission, too, of the show. So, of course, it wasn't going to really get over. What about the Warrior when he was in the night after WrestleMania in the ring talking to the crowd?
I don't
was a-
really remember the reaction, but
It was a pretty good reaction, and you could tell his appreciation was something. And for me, I'm like, this is pretty cool.
how about
know what I mean?
How about Punk's return?
Which
And
one?
you had that. Well, I was going to say his return to AEW was pretty big, and his return to WWF was huge. When you had that one guy going, Chicago, Chicago, Chicago. So those were pretty big.
I'm going to say, I think I was more for AEW, even though I
His
heard...
AEW
yeah,
return?
because even
was
though
big.
you heard the stories, it's like, yeah, okay, this dude hasn't done nothing. He isn't coming. Oh my God, he is there. Where WWE is like, oh, cool, you got CM Punk back. Okay, you squashed everything. To me, you know what I popped a little more for was Jesse Ventura being back on WWE TV than CM Punk being on TV because CM Punk already made it back into the wrestling business.
Well, how
you
about,
know what I mean?
How about AEW just when they had their first Dynamite show? I think that was pretty big too. It's tough. You can't really pick like a TNA moment or anything because it's such a small crowd there. But so it's tough to pick these smaller promotions.
Yeah.
I think ECW had a lot of big moments.
I think, well, yeah, I think ECW.
I think when Sid showed up in ECW was a big moment.
I think ECW as a whole.
But what do we before we
I think the
we can hit some more honorable mentions, but-
So you picked Scott Steiner's debut as Survivor Series, Austin's glass breaking, WrestleMania Rock Hogan, Taz debut at Royal Rumble. I had the Hardy Boys returning at WrestleMania, Miz with the crowd reaction with the little girl, Undertaker's streak ending, Paul Heyman's speech at Hall of Fame.
So I think that Austin's glass breaking makes it.
I say that and the Hardy Boys hands down.
See, I would, because, okay, so where I said Taz and Steiner,
Yep.
those are more just for that one person. I also feel that way about the Hardy Boys. Like, I would say, like, for you have, like, I would say the Miz crowd reaction.
Yeah.
Because that was the blueprint. Like, they got that reaction from that girl, and now kind of when they wanted that, they would search for something like that, or maybe even set that up in the future for other people. But that was that first time really that stuck out. And also the Undertaker's streak. I think that was pretty to have that. I mean, you're talking about what, at least 50, 60,000 people,
Yeah.
and to hear crickets.
They were just crickets.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I was saying wrestling history, and you know how I am about wrestling history, you know how you are about wrestling history, that we had crickets for a good reason. Not that it was a good reason the streak ended, but for a good reason. It wasn't that
because
the
the crowd,
talent.
no one expected it.
Yeah. The
duped the crowd.
reactions from even Paul Heyman was,
So I think
I'll
those.
be comfortable with Taker.
I think those three make it. Or really the fourth one, I would bounce around between Hogan and Rock, or you said the Paul Heyman speech. I would bounce between the two of those.
So, all right, so you're going with, if you were to put him, will be
I would-
Austin Mania.
Austin, I would go with, for me, I would go with Austin.
Yep.
The glass breaking. I would say Hogan and Rock just because of
Yep.
how loud that crowd was for that match.
Yeah.
And then me, I would go with the Miz
Reaction.
girl, if you want to call it that, and then Taker's
Streak.
streak. I think that
See,
those
for
are
me-
4 moments that
Well, we're not,
the other ones are more personal. For those 4 other runs, they're more of a personal thing for
Okay.
the individual performers.
but, so going just off, for me, off the title of the show, the crowd reaction,
Yeah.
I would go with Austin's Glass, absolutely, hands down. I would definitely agree with Rock and Hogan's match at WrestleMania because that was probably, you only have a small handful of matches that's literally back and forth, that whole crowd, that whole show. And that's very hard to do. And for Rock and Hogan to be able to pull that off, and at the caliber where they were at that time, absolutely. I would pick the Hardy Boys, not because I picked them. I think that reaction was probably one of the loudest, and I think at that time for Manias, they needed a big reaction. And then I would probably be tossed between, I would probably lean a little more towards Take a Streak than the girl.
Okay.
With Miz,
Well, I'll tell
only
you what,
because
you pick the Hardy thing because if you want to pick it, were the Hardys return and the Undertaker streak ending the same Mania? I can't remember. I don't remember.
no, I don't think so because I don't remember now.
The Hardys returned at the one in San Francisco, right? I don't remember. It doesn't matter.
Because I think the streak was over by then.
Okay.
And then they came back again, and I think Taker lost again to Brock at that one.
All right.
I know it was one of the longest
Yeah, the Hardys
aisles.
returned and was okay. I don't know. Whatever. the WrestleMania.
Well, you get put on the spot, you get hit in the head of cheers a
They
lot.
bleed into being the
Right.
same event for me. So.
All right, so then.
But there's so many different. How about? I mean, you could do a
so wait,
negative
so
reaction.
who's the last one? Are we going to do a Take a Streak?
Yeah, I'm fine with
All right,
Take a
so-
Streak. How about when RoboCop showed up? That's a Halloween. That was a Halloween Havoc, right?
Yeah,
We'll save that for the Halloween Havoc show.
and that's coming this week. Streak. So where are we right now? We're doing pretty good on time to this show, right?
Yeah, we still got about 5 minutes.
All right, so our final 4, okay, was Stone Cold Steve Austin's glass breaking for every one of his entrances. WrestleMania 18, Rock Hogan reaction. The Hardy Boys returning at WrestleMania, and the Undertaker streak ending at WrestleMania. A lot of WrestleManias in this particular one. And that's the biggest thing too. A crowd reaction it's what you need. When we talk about those crickets, that's that one thing you never want to have. You want to
Hogan's-
have something.
Hogan slamming Andre was big too. But
That was big, but I think too it was already getting around back then that he's already been slammed prior to that, and it wasn't the greatest slam. If you were to look at Hogan back then and what you would thought he would be able to do, my personal opinion, I think Luger slam to Yoko
I never liked Luger's slam on Yoko. To me, that was more like you know who slammed him really good, but they didn't count it was Crush. Luger's slam was always like a
Yeah.
hip toss. How about that for a failure? Luger coming off the helicopter. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, there was nothing on that. But they've done that at some of these WrestleMania moments and stuff. They had, I think, Charlotte on a helicopter before too. It's like, all right, cool, you're flying with this helicopter. At least Luger landed next to them.
Another big moment, because we're so wrapped up in these. I think when Dusty came out and Nikita was his partner after Magnum TA had gotten into his accident, and then Nikita came out as the babyface all of a sudden, that was huge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
What
old NWA moments that we haven't really.
What about Hogan turning face again at WWE when he decided not to be NWO
Well,
anymore?
that was like the night after what I was saying when
Yeah.
when he came out. That kind of ties into the WrestleMania 18. But yeah, that's the night he got like that 5-minute ovation. You mentioned when Edge returned at the Rumble. When Kevin Nash returned at the Rumble in Boston, that was huge too. I remember him getting a huge ovation then. Also, there was a Cena return that was pretty big, a Triple H return, even Cody when he returned. I mean, there's a lot of big ovations. How about the heel? How about when Goldberg beat Hogan at the Dome in Atlanta when he won the title from him on Nitro? That was pretty big. I mean, these are just honorable mentions,
Yeah.
So
Even Jericho, when he came, in the countdown and stuff for the Y2J, that was still, you got to give Jericho credit for that because that was very drawn out at that point. It was very predictable it was going to be him.
I mean, The
And
Rock
he
gets
was
huge
still-
ovations when you get the "If you smell,"
Yep.
and of course the crowd goes crazy for that.
Yep.
I think Roman gets huge ovations now. To the point where it's like, I mean, do any of them really stand out? No, because he gets so many big ovations. I think like when I picked the Taz and the Scott Steiner one, and you picked the Hardy Boys one, those were huge.
Yeah.
And also like when the Hardy Boys came back, that was their pinnacle. I think that night with that reaction that they got, they weren't going to top that. With the crowd reaction, the crowd was not going to pop as big as they did that night when it was the surprise.
Right.
And the same thing again with Taz and Steiner. They weren't going to ever duplicate that crowd reaction ever again. They were debuted in the right place at the right and that's another thing too. Some of these things are the right place at the right time.
What about the Kiss My Foot match with Bret the Hitman Hart and he finally got to put the foot in Jerry's
don't
mouth?
remember.
That was a pretty big
I don't remember the reaction for that.
I remember that reaction. That's our final four. Let us know if you think we made the right picks out of our picks, and let us know if you would have picked something different. Now, I do know a lot of you guys are writing in. We did plan on having them read off at this show. We were doing really good on time, but now we just got the wrap-up sign, so we're not going to be able to get to them, so I do apologize. We will get them next week for you guys. Please take our QR code, scan it, takes 10 seconds, totally free. Help us make a National Pro Wrestling Day. Take a Smile Up Challenge. Help us spread more smiles than hate in the world. What I just did is all you got to do. Tag people online to do the same thing. And you know what they say.
Come back next week and see what's in the corner.
See you next week, folks.